We're going to be presenting the three-step virtual sales process. You want to know what their motivators are for wanting to look into this so that you can tailor your design and your presentation to match up with exactly what the buyer is trying to achieve. And so you as a solar professional, you as a sales professional, it really is your job to ask the right questions. And that's why we call our customers clients, not customers, because this is not a one and done transaction and then you move on to the next deal. Now, you always want to call to action your prospect to the next logical step. All right, welcome back to another special live training edition here on the Solar Surge podcast. Today we're talking about how to sell solar. And let me go ahead and kill my feedback here. We're going to be talking about the process of how to sell solar. You know, there's so much interest right now in solar and in solar sales specifically. A lot of folks get into it maybe because they hear there's a high income potential. Other folks are just very interested in the benefits that you can provide, whether it be financial savings, environmental benefits. In my case, being able to help people become more self-sufficient for emergency backup purposes. But there's so many reasons why solar sales it has a tremendous amount of attention right now. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of folks out there that are selling solar the wrong way, in my opinion. And so that's why Solar Surge is here, is to help those that want to learn how to sell solar as a true solar professional. And so in today's training, and we're going to be teaching the three-step professional sales process, the consultative sales process that we use here at Solar Surge. Is the same process that I use personally on a daily and weekly basis. Literally, I've got my Solar Surge sales guide right here that we're going to be going through here with you. And then, of course, taking your questions and providing some answers at the end. At this point, I'd like to introduce my co-host and my co-instructor at Solar Surge University. Dan Freshley here is joining us. Dan, again, is the CEO and founder of Radiant Solar, which is one of the largest independent solar dealerships, solar sales companies, currently doing business in Virginia, the Carolinas, and a number of other states as well. Dan's team includes a door-to-door team, a virtual team, he's done in-home sales. So he's really had a chance to see the solar sales business from just about every angle you could imagine. So Dan, welcome back to the podcast. Really looking forward to giving this training with you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. I know this has been something we've been looking forward to delivering, and been years in the making as far as our relationship and how we've taken our process and how we've done things. So looking forward to kind of getting it out there to the audience as well.
Yeah, same here, man. Really, really looking forward to getting into it. So again, guys, we're going to be presenting the three-step virtual sales process. And so those three steps, I'm just going to define. So those three steps are the discovery interview or needs analysis. Step number 2 is delivering the pitch or giving the presentation. And then number 3 is following up and closing the deal. So let's go ahead and jump right into the training now. And we're going to start with step 1 here, which is needs analysis, or what we call the discovery interview. And so, you know, with all professional selling, the first step in the process is going to be needs analysis. And the reason is very simply, until you understand what the homeowner, what the prospect's needs, goals, and pain points are, there's no way that you can design or prescribe the right solution. So maybe if you're a solar sales person out there, maybe you've learned how to do door-to-door and how to talk to a homeowner going door-to-door, or maybe you've learned on a pre-written sales script like what you have to tell the homeowner. I'm going to ask you to just kind of set that aside right now. And what we're going to talk about first is how to interview your prospect to even find out if they're a good candidate to work with you. And if they are, find out really what it is that they're looking to achieve out of the whole solar activity in the first place. So one of the first questions that we ask in the discovery process is, you know, so have you ever looked into solar before? You know, have you looked into how it works? Now, this is intentionally asked as an open-ended question because we're trying to gauge where this particular prospect is on their buying journey. You know, some folks, they could have responded to a direct response marketing. Maybe they saw a Facebook ad and they clicked the ad and then they got booked for an appointment. Or in many cases, it could be somebody who's thought about going solar for many, many months or many, many years. And it was just your advertisement or your marketing that caused them to kind of take that action to actually book an appointment. But you want to start out the engagement with an open-ended question like, hey, have you looked into this before? Have you looked into how it works, to gauge where they are on the customer journey? Dan, let me throw it over to you. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the needs analysis part, and this is something that I kind of alluded to briefly when we were talking live yesterday, but the needs analysis part and really just good question asking, I think, is the fundamental basis for all sales. I think I made the comment, I've trained my reps before, and sometimes I've got to remind myself of this when I'm selling, is that the best sales practices often happen in the question asking, right? If you ask the questions, if we try to just shut up and be quiet as a salesperson and not talk too long, but discover what they're looking for, ask the right questions, our client or our buyer will lead us to the answer on what they are going to, what their buying criteria is, or how they're going to, they're going to transact. So I think it's super important that we discover, we do needs analysis, and we go through this process. And I know years ago, Joe, when we were really, worked together previously, this was a huge part of where a vast majority of the conversation, like if you were to look at, say you have an hour meeting with somebody, hopefully a vast majority of this is actually, 30 minutes or so, 20 minutes or so is happening in the needs analysis, question asking, and discovery interview process. So this is a really important part. Can't be overlooked. Sometimes we just want to jump in to start selling too much, and we need to slow down, ask the right questions, because it'll make the selling part of it or the presentation part of it a lot more smooth and seamless once we know what our customer is looking for.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. And one thing to realize too, folks, is that there's a lot of different reasons why people look into solar. Now, I know that, again, if you came from a door-to-door background or an outbound sales background where you're kind of creating the interest yourself, because of your outbound marketing, then that's one thing. But many of the leads that you'll end up engaging with, especially if you adopt a professional sales process like the one that we teach here, you're going to be fielding inbound leads that they reached out to you for some reason. Either they went to a website, they requested some quotes, or maybe they responded to your ad, or maybe they went to your website or your social media directly because they were referred to you and they want to talk to you about solar. So one of the important things is, just like Dan mentioned, is that you want to know what their motivators are for wanting to look into this, so that you can tailor your design and your presentation to match up with exactly what the buyer is trying to achieve. So on that note, one of the questions that I'll oftentimes ask next is, so what is your main goal with looking at solar power? Is it to reduce your electric bill, or are you looking more for something for emergency backup purposes? Now, when Solar Surge just got relaunched, if you will, as a virtual business in 2021, a couple months into the business, we had this big deep freeze and the whole power grid failure in Texas. And it was national news, and it was also very, very painful and a very sort of fresh in the mind trauma event for a lot of Texans. And so there was actually a time when the majority of solar leads that we were engaging with, solar prospects, were people that wanted solar because they were not confident in the stability of the electric grid. And so a lot of times that came out very early in the conversation, where they wanted to share with me their story of what it was like to be without power, and if they lost the heat, and maybe they had to try to evacuate their family and go to a friend's house or try to go to a hotel. And so you want to ask those questions to figure out what the motivators are. And once you determined what those motivators are, I actually advocate to keep them in that mind space. So if they mention that, well, they lost power during the last hurricane and they had, they were at risk of losing the food in their refrigerator, then you might ask them some more questions that would, let them tell more of that story, let them get more of that out. Like, for example, tell me about your water situation. Are you hooked up to city water, or did your water service work? Were you able to flush the toilets, or did you have to improvise somehow? Keep them thinking about that. Keep them, reliving and feeling that experience of what created that need and that desire to go solar in the first place. And Dan, I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think right there was a pain point that a lot of Texans experienced in that exact moment. There's obviously pain points that a variety of different customers in different areas experience. Sometimes it's the cost of electricity if you're a homeowner in Southern California or somewhere in California. Maybe it's, Southern Florida or the East Coast or different various parts of Southwestern Florida, wherever, where hurricanes could be more likely. So there's the likelihood of storms, and they might bring up a story about one time the kids were just going crazy because the power were out. They were scared, and we wanted a way to, entertain them and make it more comfortable. So I think that process right there of asking that question and figuring out what their motivations are and what really, sparked their interest, and then allowing them to kind of elaborate on that. Again, that is the customer oftentimes helping you know how to help them, right? They're going to tell you what they're looking for. I think one of the things I oftentimes will phrase to people too, Joe, just for what it's worth, is when I'm asking that question, sometimes I'll ask the question, hey, as you've looked into solar, a lot of people are considering one of three different things when they're looking at solar. Now, maybe if I know a little bit about this customer, if I've had a little bit of previous context, I can, position these three in a different order. So think about that. You can always interchangeably change these three, but I'll ask like, hey, are you looking at this for backup power needs, right? And maybe I'm trying to resonate with, hey, there's a chance that you've lost power and that's really prevalent to you. Number two, maybe are you looking at this for economic reasons, like you're looking to save money, you're tired of spending money on the electricity company? Or maybe number three, you're looking at this for environmental reasons. Which of those three is it? Or hey, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, maybe it's all of them, but let's unpack that. So sometimes that's what I'll do, and I'll rank those three in different orders based on what I think they might be looking for. Because in your mind, you're always going to, as I present them, you're always thinking, as the customer's thinking, I'm ranking those in order of priority. So I try not to assume what their priority is. A lot of times I know for Joe, for you and I, we sell a lot on emergency preparedness, making sure that, hey, you are self-sufficient, you're prepared, you're empowered in the event of an emergency, a disaster, a grid outage. So battery oftentimes ranks at the top of that conversation, followed by economics and environmental. But those are just a couple of the three that I oftentimes will throw out there as well.
Yep. And again, I think that's why it's so important to ask these questions up front. Here are some other questions that we might ask during our discovery. This is for somebody who has looked into solar before. We would then ask them, well, Mr. Homeowner, Mr. Prospect, what made you look into it originally? Now, what you're going to find is that for some prospects, they've actually been thinking about going solar for many, many years. And for whatever reason, they couldn't go forward with the project. Maybe it's because they were renting their home and now they own their home. So they're in a position that they can purchase solar panels now. Maybe they were, somebody that got into solar like way back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I've talked to folks like this, and now they're finally moving into their retirement home. They finally have enough savings put together that they're going to buy the home of their dreams, that this vision that they've had in their head for many, many years. And so you can be the person that helps them to achieve that goal. But you've got to ask those questions and then keep asking questions to kind of keep them in that mind space, whether it's, well, I've dreamed about this since I was in college, or hey, I was down without power for a week, but whatever it is, keep them talking about it. Let them tell their full story about why solar is important to them. Now, as you're doing that, I think you're going to find that the discovery conversation is going to go down one of two paths, or at least that's what I find in a lot of my engagements, is that the discovery interview will go down one of two paths. It's either the emergency preparedness, emergency backup path, or it's the financial savings or environmental benefits path. So as I mentioned earlier, let's say somebody who expressed that their pain point is not having backup power or not wanting to be without power, then you might ask them questions like, well, Mr. Prospect, how often do you lose power in your neighborhood? Okay, and when was the last time that you were down? How long were you down? And so again, you want to keep them remembering why this is important to them, keep them feeling the emotional pain of that position, so that, again, it's going to be building that need and that desire on their side, but it's also going to be giving you the keys to closing the deal, because they're going to be telling you exactly the experience. In the case of backup power, they're going to be telling you exactly the experience they want to avoid in the future, right? Or in the case of bill savings, and we'll talk about that in a moment, they'll tell you about what their experience, what their pain point is dealing with the power company. Dan, I'll give it back over to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are two great things, right? Because depending on which way they go, it's kind of the fork in the road as to which which different style I might approach the conversation. And ultimately what'll go into the next section of all of this, which will be actually how we're making the presentation or how we're delivering our proposal to them. But I think it's important to just be well equipped to understand both of those different paths. What tools in your belt and what, arsenal of information do you have to pull from to help confirm their buying criteria, help confirm kind of the things that they're most concerned with. I know a lot of times across the board, what we see, pretty often is a lot of people just want to sell solar based on this monthly payment, how much money you can save type of thing. And I think that that's great. And I think a lot of people are motivated to do that, certainly. But I often find, I oftentimes see that a lot of the clients we work with are willing to spend more money, than they would be spending because they're trying to achieve a particular, end ideology. Maybe the ideology is energy independence and security. And it's like, look, I don't care if it costs me money. That's why people go buy generators, right? Like, for example, we do a lot of battery backup systems, but you have to think, if you're a solar professional selling battery today, a lot of people have been buying generators for years and years and years. I mean, decades, that had no real financial ROI, right? I mean, yeah, you could calculate, hey, when I lose power and my refrigerator, it starts warming up, I lose all my food. And so by having the generator, there's an ROI, but not really. I mean, most people are buying a generator because they want peace of mind and they're willing to spend the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to acquire that. So stop thinking that you immediately have to sell that based on a price, because for them, it's like, look, no, I want to accomplish a lifestyle thing of quality and protection and preparedness, and I'm willing to pay the price for it. So that's, I know, one of the things that we do a lot of, Joe, and something we've done for quite some time. But of course, on the other side too, that doesn't mean that I can't work with the homeowner that is really focused on dollar for dollar ROI, break-even points, just what kind of investment, how does this compare against other types of investments? I love that conversation. I love finances and I love numbers, and I'll pull up sometimes in my presentations, depending on how the conversations go, different like investor.gov tools to show, hey, if you choose to invest your money, this is what this can produce. So it's just having different paths and understanding how to navigate that. And we'll talk more about that as we progress through this training.
Yeah. Yep. And, I think another key point here to take away is that, it really is the person who's asking the questions that's going to control the tempo of the conversation. And so you as a solar professional, you as a sales professional, it really is your job to ask the right questions during this initial discovery meeting. You're not really trying to sell them on anything, right? You're not trying to push them on any particular solution. You're not trying to sell them on any particular installer or any brand of solar panel. At this point, you're just trying to set the context for the next conversation where you're actually going to have a solution to deliver. But this initial engagement is all about understanding the homeowner's position, pain points, hot buttons, and of course, firm technical requirements. Now, another question that I like to ask is this question of, have you ever met with anybody else regarding solar in the past? Especially now in the age of online sales and online reviews and YouTube, a lot of solar prospects have at some point done some bit of solar research, and they maybe even solicited a quote. Maybe they haven't met with a company, maybe they just got a quote online. Or in many cases, prospects that you're talking to may have already in hand 2 or 3 other quotes from other companies. And so I find it's very helpful right up front in the discovery interview to ask them if they have ever met with a solar company before. And if so, what prevented them from going forward? Now, this question has 2 benefits. One, you can kind of tell where you are in terms of competition. Maybe you want to adjust your pricing a little bit based on the competition. But the other issue here is, if they do have quotes from other competitors, but they haven't gone with those competitors yet, you want to get the prospect to tell you why they haven't gone with your competitor, right? Because typically you're going to hear something like this: well, the sales guy didn't really seem like he knew what he was talking about. Or, well, they were just really kind of pushing me to sign up. I didn't really understand what it was. I just didn't feel comfortable with it. But you're going to hear all sorts of reasons why your prospect doesn't want to go with your competition. Remember that, note that down. Don't trash your competition. Don't take this as an opportunity to, throw mud at your competition. Just politely note those things down. Keep the prospect talking about what he doesn't like about your competitor. and then go on with the rest of your discovery process. Dan, anything to say on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part there is oftentimes, and I've, teach this and train on this a lot, is if they're talking to you, despite the fact that, I mean, I've won deals in the past where I've had homeowners come to me and say, yeah, I've got 10 other quotes, right? Well, there's a reason why they keep looking. There's a reason why they're talking to you. And so probably a lot of times what I find is that in the world of how we want to teach professional selling, they didn't know if they could trust the person. They didn't know if they could trust the company. They didn't know if they could trust the product. It's going to come down to one of those three reasons, right? Maybe the product was a good fit, but they didn't like the company. They liked the salesperson, but they just didn't like the company. Or maybe they liked the first two, but didn't like the salesperson. So you as a professional, with the way that we go about our business and the way that we teach and the way that we train others to do this, is like, hey, look, they're working with you or they're engaging with you because there's a legitimate opportunity for you to be able to work with them, because they're not happy with the other options that have been presented to them. And sometimes, like you just said there, Joe, it's a good question just to ask, hey, you've gotten a bunch of other quotes. Why haven't you moved forward with these other companies? Right. And just allow them to talk, right? We stop talking, let them answer, ask them a good question. And then they're going to drop little hints and seeds of things that you can come back to, or maybe just go into that conversation right then and there, depending on it. I think another key part, though, that you just said there, again, professional selling, is you're not trashing the competitor. There is a proper way. Maybe this actually, Joe, would be a good training to do for any audience later, about how you dig into your competitors and help provide a proper consultative approach to your customer about, hey, I want you to go solar. You're going to hear one of the things we talk about here is the worst decision most of the homeowners we work with can make is the decision not to go solar. That is the worst decision. So now I'll tell people that sometimes, just, hey, look, I am absolutely passionate about you moving forward with going solar at your home. Obviously, I would love to earn your business and I want to be the one that does the project. But if it's not me, allow me to at least help you make a good decision. I've had years of experience, and maybe you can't say that today, whoever, is watching this, but people, or you've got a company you're working with, or other people you can lean on, you can borrow experience from, and just let them know, hey, I've got years of experience. Let me help you make the right decision. And there's some just public resources you can use to dig in and figure out, okay, who is this other company? And you can do it in a professional manner, not I'm throwing mud and dirt at this other company and trying to discredit them, because customers see through that too, right? If that's how you approach that, they're also going to have little seeds of like, this person's kind of shady, or they don't seem like they're being as professional as I would like. And they probably won't work with you if you handle things that way as well. So anyway, that might be just a good training topic for another day.
Yep. Yeah, we can definitely jump into that. And Dan, I agree with you 100%. I mean, as a solar sales professional, we are above all of that mudslinging and all that stuff. Frankly, we don't have to trash our competition. It's going to come through in our presentation that we are the most thoroughly prepared sales professional in this engagement, in this sales conversation. And that's what we teach you in Solar Surge University. I mean, I wish we had time to get through all of this stuff in today's live training, but we'll actually put this up. This is our 3-step virtual sales process. There should be a link in the description below if you want to just download the PDF. You can grab a copy of this. But these are the same interview questions that I use when I'm talking to homeowners here, and the same process that we use. So again, if we don't get to all of it in the live training, the link is down there in the description below. But here are just a few more while we're still on it here, talking about the discovery interview and questions to ask. Obviously, the path that a lot of you are more familiar with is people that are looking into solar for electric bill savings. So one question you might ask is, hey, do you remember what your electric bill was when you first moved into your home? Now, this question works particularly well for people that have been in their home for 10 years or more. Because if you can ask them, hey, do you remember what your bill was when you first moved into the home? And by the way, most homeowners know what their expenses were when they first bought their home. They know what their mortgage was, what their electric bill was, what their cable bill was. So if you can kind of take them back in time to what their electric bill was 10 years ago, and then ask them, well, how much are you paying now for electric? And usually it's going to be a number that's double what they paid 10 years ago. Could be even more in certain markets like California or Texas, where we're seeing rates that have risen. Some of these places, rates have risen double just in the past 3 years. And so you might then follow up with that and saying, well, hey, if this is what they're doing to you if this what they did to you in the last 5 or 10 years, where do you think rates are going to be going 5 or 10 years from now? Yeah. Okay. Well, how serious are you getting about getting away from all this? How serious are you about really becoming energy independent? And so there's a whole line of questioning there. But again, you as the solar sales professional, it's your responsibility to elicit all the key information from your prospect during the discovery, particularly the emotional pain points and triggers, but also what their specific motivators are, as well as what the specific requirements are. So you do have to get that electric bill as well during the discovery interview process. Again, we'll have this full document up for you as a free download if you want to take a look at the Solar Surge sales interview process. We actually have all 3 steps broken out for you here, but I don't have time to go through all the questions on today's training. Dan, I'll kick it back over to you. Is there anything else that you would like to add on the discovery interview process?
No, I mean, I think that's the main stuff. Again, we have a tendency as salespeople to talk too much. Let's be quiet. Let's listen. Let's ask good questions. Let's, when you catch something that maybe comes out with a little bit of passion from your customer, build on that a little bit more, ask questions. Again, look, you're not doing these things to be manipulative or anything. You're being a professional. You're discovering. We've made analogies before about if you're a doctor and if someone walks into your office and says, "Hey, I've got a problem," the doctor is going to ask questions. Well, hey, and Joe, you've mentioned this, right? Rotator cuff problems. Like, okay, well, hey, what's your range of motion? What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? They're going to ask questions and they're going to try to further identify where is the pain that you're experiencing. Same thing for us here. We're going to try to identify that, but it's important we do this in this first step before we even progress to reviewing the system and presenting a solution.
Yep, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for step 1, guys. So again, the first step in all professional selling is needs analysis. You have to understand what situation the prospect's in, what their motivation is for meeting with you in the first place, what they're trying to get out of the solar system. Your job is to ask the right questions, take really good, thorough notes. If you're on a virtual call, go ahead and record the virtual call. That way you can reference it back later. You can also use it for training purposes. By the way, if you guys do sign up, one of the things that we're going to be including in Solar Surge University is a handful of live Zoom call recordings of myself and other Solar Surge team members working with live prospects, with live homeowners. So if you want to see how we apply all these concepts, how we apply all these skills that we're teaching on real live calls, that's part of what you'll have access to on the Solar Surge University training course. But with that, let's go ahead and move into section 2. So now when we talk about section 2, we are talking about delivering the pitch. What we call here, we call it the system review. And the reason we call it the system review is because, our sales people, we call ourselves sales professionals. We actually use the term internally, we use the term system designer. Because after you've done your discovery interview, after you've gathered all the information from your homeowner, what they're looking for, then it's actually on you to design the system to match that, making sure that you're picking the right solar panels, picking the right inverters, the right quantity of solar panels. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the training here. But basically, you're designing a solution for that homeowner, and then you're going to be reviewing that design with them. And that's why we call it the system review. So the basic steps of the system review are, number 1 is what we call kill the bill. And kill the bill is basically showing them what their situation is currently with the power company and actually extrapolating that out over 20 or 25 years, showing them the trajectory that they're on if they just keep paying their power bill, if electric rates keep going up, if inflation just keeps going up, what that actual investment, shouldn't really call it investment, it's just really lost cash. It's sunk cost of just sticking with the power company. So you want to show that first to frame the rest of the conversation. Dan, I know you have a great way of presenting kill the bill, so I'm going to throw it back over to you on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first part here too is, although what we talked about during this discovery process is you want to determine exactly what the homeowner is, what their motivations are. And again, sometimes it's not as much economics, but the reality of solar too is that there is a significant economic benefit. So I'm always at least commenting on this. Hey, Mr. Homeowner, Mrs. Homeowner, this is your current situation, right? You might not be aware of this, or you might know this, but hey, there's data nationally that shows energy costs have increased historically by 4% per year. But right here in our market in Southern California or in Dallas, Texas, or wherever the location might be, here are some policies that have recently been passed. Or here's what's happening with our state corporation commissions and utility, changes or renewable energy legislations. So being equipped and armed with resources that could be news publications, that could be direct. If you can find a direct publication from the utility company or from a governing body like a state corporation commission, or like a utilities commission that oversees the utilities of the state, that's going to be immensely powerful for you to then show them and say, hey, look, I'm not just showing you numbers here that are left for interpretation. Here's the actual real data from the authorities that are putting this out. And again, a big part of the Kill the Bill is just helping them understand what I have found time and time again in the industry over thousands of presentations is a homeowner walk away and say, oh man, that was really expensive, right? If they say that, that's shame on me, because they didn't understand well enough the comparison that we were really properly making, right? And it's hard, right? We're used to, as consumers and buyers, we go to the car dealership. We know what the MSRP price is. We know the car costs $35,000 or $55,000 or whatever the price may be. But when a homeowner goes to look at a solar system, they don't have proper context more times than not as to what their alternative was, right? The alternative is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, if you spend $200 a month on utilities and your cost goes up by 4% per year over the next 25 years, quick note, why are we talking about 25 years? Well, that typically is about the industry standard for warranty when it comes to inverters, solar panels, performance guarantees, degradations, et cetera. Those can obviously vary a little bit depending on the product, but over 25 years, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, this is how much you're going to spend. This is how much your cost of doing nothing is supposed to be. So when I show you your solar system, despite whatever the total cost is, despite whatever the net cost is after eligible rebates and incentives, you're going to be saving tens of thousands of dollars compared to that solution. And oftentimes that's the case even when a battery backup is involved, where a battery doesn't have most times a direct ROI cost benefit, but it has a peace of mind benefit. So the Kill the Bill part here is incredibly important to really, ideally, I've had people say before when I've done this properly, where they'll get fired up about, oh man, I hate so-and-so, right? Whatever utility company. And when I know that I've got them in that kind of place, and again, I'm not manipulating, but I'm just trying to help build value. When I got them in that kind of place, I know I've done a great job with the Kill the Bill to help set them up for, hey, I'm going to be the superhero now, and I'm going to come in and show you your solution and how we can help you.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And what I found too is when you do that analysis, and by the way, if you have a good proposal software, they will have a section in the proposal software where it can show you the financial projection based on the homeowner's current electric usage. Now, the software that we use here is Aurora, but there's a lot of good softwares out there. There's Aurora, there's Solo, there's Solar Graph. I think they were recently bought by Enphase. But there's a number of good solar softwares out there that allow you to develop a presentation that includes some kind of a financial forecast. And as Dan said, it's not manipulative. In fact, I'll tell the prospects on my presentations, like, look, the reason I'm showing you this is I just want to give you some context around pricing. Okay. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to show you some pricing. Okay. I promise you it's going to be a whole lot less than this number here of what you would pay to the power company over 25 years. Even if they want to do battery backup and the battery cost added, it's still going to be a whole lot less than just sticking with the power company over the next 25 years. And I think it really does help kind of set them at ease, which is like, okay, whatever he shows me, it's not going to be worse than what I have now. And also for you as a sales professional, it's sometimes helpful to remind yourself that even though the number on your proposal might seem like a big number to you, especially if you're a young person starting out, you might see these proposals, oh, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Well, compared to the $150,000 that prospect would have to pay if they stick with the power company, your proposal for $50,000 or $60,000, especially if you can get them with a nice low interest financing package, is really not that much. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really the point of this too, is to take that stress of, oh, can I afford this? Just take that off the table, because the reality is if they can afford to stick with the power company, they can afford pretty much anything that you're going to show them after that. I know, Dan, we say it so many times, like price is not the issue. And I know we're kind of skipping ahead to more of the how to close the deal and the objection handling. But I want you guys to hear this out there, because price is really not the issue when it comes to solar, right? Sticking with the power company is more expensive than solar. And if they do decide that they want to go solar, whether your quote is $1,000 or $2,000 more or less than the competition, frankly, that's not the issue either. Because at the end of the day, what we're proposing here is not just, hey, here's the system, take it, and I'm out of here. What we're proposing here is setting them up with an installer, right? It's your design, but now you're setting them up with an installer that's going to take your design and actually build it onto this homeowner's home. And then you're essentially setting up this 25-year relationship, right? So this is not a decision you want to make over a couple $1,000s price difference. This is a decision you want to make, like, is this the right design? Is this the right team? Is this the right professional that I'm working with? And that's why we call our customers clients, not customers, because this is not a one and done transaction and then you move on to the next deal. This is actually an ongoing relationship where your prospect is going to be under your care and under the care of the installer that you hook them up with, not just to get the system installed, but to keep that system healthy over the entire 25-year of the relationship. So let's go through some of the other steps here in the process. And by the way, we have these basic steps here for the system review process. Now, the process we use at Solar Surge is a virtual process. So oftentimes we're doing our discovery interviews on a Zoom call. Typically that's going to be on a live call. And then many times we actually deliver our presentations on a recorded presentation. So it's not really a live call, but we're actually recording the presentation, doing a screen recording with us narrating through the presentation. And then we're sending that to the homeowner so they can watch it and rewatch it on their time. We use a software called Loop. We can tell you more about that in the course. But anyway, what I would recommend that you do is that you have slides or you have tabs in your browser open for each one of these sections. So for example, for the kill the bill step, you might have a local news article showing how that the local utility company in your area is going to be raising electric rates. I do this all the time. I just did a presentation in just outside of Phoenix, Arizona yesterday for a homeowner, and I pulled up an article from SRP, it was Salt River Project. It's one of the big utilities in Arizona. I just pulled up an article from their own website saying how they just got a 9.6% rate increase approved. So that kind of stuff really helps drive it home for kill the bill. So that would be one tab in my browser. Then I would have another tab where I have my design software up. And so on my design software, I'm showing them an actual 3D model of their home. I'm showing them the solar panels on their roof. And then I'm using the software to calculate production. So I can show them, hey, with a 20 panel system, let's say it's 400 watt solar panels. So this is an 8 kilowatt system and it's going to produce 12,000 kilowatt hours per year. And be able to actually pull that up real time and show them as you're presenting the system. Now, the next piece of that is showing them the equipment that you've chosen for them. Remember, as the solar professional, you are the system designer, right? I mean, that's how we teach things here. You are the system designer. You have picked the solar panel and the inverter to use, right? This wasn't just randomly chosen for you, right? You picked specifically this panel, this inverter. So explain to them which equipment you picked and explain why. Is it because this panel gives you the better efficiency, or maybe it looks better? Maybe it's more resilient to extreme high temperatures. You know, for those of you that are selling in places like Arizona or Nevada, you know, having a solar panel that has a low temperature coefficient, so it holds up better to extreme high temperatures, that could be important to your prospect. Other places like Florida, maybe they want a panel that has a really, really high wind rating because they're concerned about hurricanes and really high winds. And is the system going to hold up under those weather conditions? So make sure that you're prepared to not only show them what equipment that you've chosen for their product, for their project, but also why you've chosen those particular components. And I guess I should say on that too, is you want to make sure that you're partnered with an installer that gives you some choice on these things. You know, if you have an installer that just says, hey, look, this is the one solar panel we have, just sell this to everybody, or hey, this is the one battery we have, just sell this to everybody, that's really not where you want to be as a professional. I mean, maybe if you're on the doors and you're drumming up your own leads and these people don't really know much about solar, then that's fine. You're just kind of selling them solar as a concept. But if you're a solar professional and you're designing a system specifically for your homeowner's needs, you're going to want to make sure that you're working with an installer that gives you the flexibility. Am I going to choose Solar Edge or Enphase? Am I going to choose a Q-cell panel or an REC panel? You know, just to give you a few examples. So as you work through your virtual sales presentation, or even if it's an in-person sales presentation, let's say you're working through slides on your presentation, or maybe you have them in tabs on your browser. After you show them what equipment you've chosen for them and why, the next thing is to present who the installer is that you represent and why. Now, I found it's very convenient and very profitable, frankly, to explain to them why you've chosen to work with this installer. Especially if you're an independent solar dealer where maybe you work with multiple installers, you want to explain to them why you chose this particular one to work with, both why you chose as a representative to work with this installer and why you've selected this installer for their particular project. So many times that may include, just some of the basic things like time in business, online review rating, the financial strength of the company. This one is huge, by the way, the financial strength of the company and the bankability of the company. There are so many solar businesses here right now that have been in business for less than 5 years. They may promise you the world, but statistically, half those companies are going out of business in the next 5 years. And that's not what you want when you're talking about a system with a 25-year warranty. You don't want to just be getting them the best, so-called best price or lowest price today. What you really want is making sure that you're setting them up with the best partnership for today, but also for the next 25 years. So talking about the financial strength of the company is especially important. And also explaining to them why you as a sales representative have chosen to work with this particular installer. You don't have to work with any particular installer. There's plenty of solar companies out there, but why did you choose to work with and partner with this company? And how long have you been working with them? I find that all that makes really good sense.
I think, Joe, real quick, just to jump in on that, and I don't mean to cut you off here, but I think that that part there, the installer selection, but also talking about why you chose that installer, goes back to what the brief live training or live conversation we had yesterday. We touched on that concept, or the discussion about the self concept, right? Your own self-worth, the value that you bring. So I think that's a very, understated thing, but you want to make sure that a homeowner knows, like, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, like, I have value and I have worth as well. And the reason why I chose to lay my roots or work with this company is because of X, Y, Z, right? Yes, part of this is, hey, making sure that the homeowner is well taken care of for years and years and years to come. But that also goes to you as a sales professional, because trust me, what oftentimes happens is you're the one who built the relationship. They purchased from you. In their mind, they made the investment with you, the individual, right? And then you represented maybe the company that you're selling for, or the company that you install, that you're installing with. But at the end of the day, I can promise you, questions and long-term things are still going to come back to you in some sort of capacity. So I think you want to make sure that you really articulate that well. Like, hey, I chose to work here and work with this entity or this company because of a certain, set of reasons, and really delivering value. I'm very big, I know you are too, Joe, on just value selling. It's not about price. It's about bankability. It's about reliability. It's about long-term, success that those companies have had. And far too often, I know I've seen it in many, many different states and have experienced it, where companies go out of business for a variety of different reasons, but then who hurts in the end is the customer. So we do our best, obviously, here at Solar Surge to make sure that we're selecting high quality installers, so that everybody that we ever refer business to or set a homeowner up with is a high quality, installer selection. So
yeah, and I've also found that it's helpful to me in some cases if I know that I'm in a competitive selling situation and I know that I'm not going to be the lowest price option. I actually find it helpful to just go ahead and preempt that right up front. I say, Mr. Homeowner, if you're looking for the cheapest price solar, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to help you with that. If you're looking for the cheapest price company, I can tell you who my competitors are that are offering super cheap pricing, but that's not what I'm going to be able to help you with. My goal in this is to be the best long-term partner over the entire 25 years of the relationship, and to make sure that I get you partnered up with an installer that's not only going to deliver an excellent job for you today, but is going to provide reliable, bankable service for you for the entire 25 years of the relationship. And that's why part of the selection process and part of what we do in vetting our installers is not just look at the online reviews, because there are ways you can buy those, and we can talk about that in a different training, but it's really looking at the financial strength of the company, because a lot of times that's not what the homeowner can see. That's not what you have public visibility into. But we want to know, like, is that installer making a profit? And if they are, for how long have they been making a profit? And how much cash is in their warranty reserve, so that if some issue comes up in the future, they don't have to rob money from one project to go repair another project. They actually have the cash set aside in a restricted warranty reserve for those issues that are inevitably going to come up. You do enough systems, there's going to be repairs needed at some point. So these are the things that you want to make sure you communicate with your homeowner. And oftentimes, homeowners will just go ahead and accept that. We can kind of get over this whole price dance and actually get to, is this the best solution? And are you the best company? Are you the best solar professional to work with for this homeowner? And then finally, the last step is to actually make the offer. Now here at Solar Surge, we use a simple one-page proposal template. And when I say proposal, it's really the last page of our presentation where we show them, this is the equipment we're choosing: panels, inverters, racking, batteries. Here's the installation, and here's the price. Here's the price. Here's your tax credit if that applies. Here's your net cost. And then if we're financing, here's your monthly payment. Now, in my experience, it's very, for me, it works very well to just have all of that on one single sheet of paper. Don't keep your homeowner dancing around, guessing around where the actual number is. Just show them, look, here's what you're going to get. Here's the price. Here's your tax credit, here's your monthly payment, and then go quickly call to action to the next logical next step. So, hey, Mr. Homeowner, if this looks good to you, then the next step here is let's go ahead and get you pre-approved for financing, and then I can send over our best offer for financing for you. Or if this looks good to you, then the next step is to just get you to approve the work order. Or if we need to make any adjustments, we can do a follow-up meeting. But if everything looks good, just let me know, and I can send over the paperwork to get started right away. Now, you always want to call to action your prospect to the next logical step. And especially if you're delivering your presentation on a recorded screen recording like we do here at Solar Surge, then what I tell folks is just assume the sale. You're going to be able to deliver your pitch exactly how you want it to sound. There's not going to be anybody to object to you as you're delivering the message. So just deliver the message exactly how you want it to sound. Assume that the answer is going to be yes, and let your prospect know what the next step is, which usually is going to be either send over the work order so I can approve it, DocuSign it, or send over the application for financing so we can get the financing approved and actually get them loan documents so that, that the deal is one click away.
Sometimes there's a credit qualification that happens earlier in the process, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to make a whole presentation or deliver pricing to someone if you don't know that they qualify for that solution or for that option. So for those of you that maybe you're doing more door-to-door, or maybe doing more in-home, or you're more limited on the options that you have as far as install partners and stuff, that would be kind of a separate thing that we might be able to help you with here at Solar Surge. But maybe you would be wise to consider doing a pre-qualification. Most of the credit qualifications for the lenders that are most common in the industry are going to be a soft credit inquiry. It's not going to negatively impact the homeowner, but at least at that point, hey, here's sort of a range of where we're at pricing wise, but I need to pre-qualify you to know for sure exactly what option I can share with you. That's not something where it's designed to be a bait and switch and you show them this and you go to something else, but it's a lot better if you can just immediately tell them, hey, great, we have you qualified. Here's what you're ready for. Again, that's going to go back. I'm going to point back to the initial discovery interview for you to figure out some of those things earlier on, because then you'll know whether you should take that step initially. But again, Joe, as you were just mentioning, our process 9 times out of 10 here is we're working through that process, presenting the proposal and presenting the price. And as we do that, we're assuming, because why wouldn't they? This is a phenomenal value. If we've done our process properly, they're going to understand that and see that, hey, why wouldn't I want to go solar? It's better than the power company, right? And so let's move forward with that. Let's get started. And Dan, thanks for letting me know. Here's the steps I need to take. Great. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it goes back to that idea, whatever you're proposing, remember, it's way better than what they're currently dealing with sticking with the power company. So I say always confidently ask for the sale, assume the answer is going to be yes, let them know what the next steps are. Let's encourage them to move to the next step. Because, at the end of the day, if they want what you're proposing, if they want this end state, as Dan said, going back to what they expressed during the discovery, if you're helping them get to that end state that they've already told you that they want, and you're the person that's going to best help them get there, then signing the contract, doing the financing application, those are just insignificant little administrative requirements that actually gets us to the end goal. With the end goal is getting them the system that they want, getting them the solar that they want, the savings that they want, the emergency backup, the self-sufficiency that they want. That's what you want to keep the attention focused on. And so if that's the case, okay, great. Then the next step is go ahead and sign this so that we can get your site survey scheduled, right? Or we can do whatever. Let's get your project, let's get the permitting application started so we can get the ball rolling for you.
Absolutely. I think the other important thing too, just to acknowledge real fast, is that a lot of people, when they say they don't like salespeople, it's because a lot of salespeople have been pushing products at somebody or pushing something towards someone in a way that that person didn't want it. They weren't interested. They weren't actually a buyer. You know, there's that Jordan Belfort line about sell me this pen. And the whole analogy is the first question was like, do you want a pen or do you need a pen? So a lot of times it's doing the discovery makes you become a valuable sales professional where you're not just here trying to sell something to them that they don't actually want so that you can make money. There's a proper exchange of value that's happening. You're lending your time, your expertise in the product that you have access to. You're going to facilitate it. You're going to help them install it. You're going to see them all the way through. And what they're exchanging is their financial resources, their money. They're paying for it by a loan payment. They're paying for it with cash, whatever that might be. And there's a reciprocal value there. Now, the best part about solar and why I love this industry is because, frankly, the value that we are providing when we give a homeowner the opportunity to go solar is significantly more beneficial to them than it is to us, the salesperson, in terms of commissions and dollars that we can make, the company in terms of the revenue or the profit that they can earn. The homeowner truly, truly in the end is the one who wins the most. And that's what I absolutely love about this industry.
Yep. Again, going back to that point, anything that we propose is going to be better than sticking with the power company. The last step into this whole 3-step sales process, of course, is following up and closing the deal. Now here at Solar Surge and in most professional selling situations, you're not going to really get that like one sit close where you give your presentation and you get them to sign up right then and there. From time to time, you will get the prospect who's actually ready to go. And a lot of times you'll know that from your discovery. If they say, hey, look, I'm looking to make a decision by the end of the week. I've already got 2 other quotes. I just want to see what you have to offer. And in many of those cases, you can actually go ahead and just get the commitment at the time of your presentation. But for most Solar Surge deals, I know our average is about 14 days lag between when we actually deliver our first proposal, our first presentation, and when we actually get the deal signed and can actually initiate that project. So the follow-up process is very, very important. We actually have a whole sequence that we build out in our CRM that sends them automated emails. And because we're also very, very big on social media, we use just kind of a weekly email update on all of our new social media content to make sure that any of our prospects stay in touch with us. But whatever it is, you have to have a structured follow-up process because, when we talk about having a successful solar business, so much of that is repeatable processes, documented repeatable processes that produce predictable, consistent results. And the same is very true of not just how you deliver the presentation, but how you follow up as well. Dan, with that, let me throw it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sale is the follow-up, right? I mean, I think most people, if you're a sales professional or you've been in any type of sales before, as much as we would love, and every now and then you get the one, the golden egg or something that falls in your lap that is like, hey, I'm ready to go right there on the initial call. But that I would encourage you to think that that's probably the abnormality. Now, if you're in door to door, that's a little more common. I know that there's different practices and different processes there, but when you're doing this from the consultative approach that we take here at Solar Surge, and when you're doing it from a high integrity, giving a lot of value, delivering a lot of information, there's oftentimes a little bit of processing that has to take place. And a homeowner is not going to be ready to make a $50,000 investment right there on the spot. So following up is where you earn the business. And a lot of times it's not going to be one follow-up. It's not going to be 2 follow-ups. It's going to be multiple touch points, multiple attempts. It could be text messages. It could be emails. It could be phone calls. I recommend do all of those, right? I always try to reach out and I'll oftentimes ask, hey, how do you prefer? Like, what's your preferred method of communication? I personally, if I'm being sold to, texting is totally fine. I don't mind a text message, but other people maybe aren't as attentive to text messages. They prefer emails, whatever it may be. But I like to follow up using all 3 methods. I like to give a call, like to follow up with a text, like to follow up with an email, and continue to nurture that. Use whatever type of calendar helps you stay on top, to-do reminders, tasks lists, whatever it might be. Ideally, you have a CRM system that allows you to stay on top of your pipeline in a way that when you're following up. And also, too, I think it's important, make sure your calendar's blocked for these things. Put blocks in your calendar, maybe from 1 to 2 o'clock or 4 to 5 o'clock or whatever the time is that works for you, that you find a good rhythm, where you're actually dedicating follow-up activity time. Because I find what is not scheduled doesn't get done. So I try to schedule those things for myself just to make sure that I'm always following up, because that's really the follow up is how I generate sales. It's how I generate revenue. It's how I generate a living.
Yeah, and this is especially important too. When you talk about competitive selling, and many of us are going to be in competitive selling situations if you're talking about working inbound leads, either from your own marketing or maybe you're using a lead or an appointment setting service. But in competitive selling, it's so important that you maintain that follow up, because believe me, your competitors will be following up and they will be trying to close the deal as well. And you don't want to let too much white space go, too much space go in between touch points between you and your prospect. Really, you want to be first of mind, right? I mean, that's the goal. You want to be first of mind. So when they think of solar, they're thinking of you first, and you don't want to give them a chance to forget you, right? So that's why I say every 48 hours, some kind of attempt, text message, phone call, email, and then also be creative in your follow-up. Like, don't just say, hey, I'm checking in. Hey, checking in with you. Say, hey, I came across this article about what the power companies doing in your area could affect your solar payback. I thought this would be interesting to you. Say, hey, I just came across this solar surge video. There's a new solar panel coming out that we could use on your system. It could boost your efficiency a little bit, or whatever it is. Try to follow up with some value add. So it's not just you checking in, trying to get a commitment from them, but it's you coming back with value, more value, more value, more value. And because that's when you can really tap into that reciprocity. And we can talk more about that, in the full training. But the more that you've done for your prospect during the sales process, the more they're going to feel obligated to go with you. Now, a lot of times that value is just coming in the form of education. Hey, you taught me how this worked. You taught me how that worked. You taught me how this. You explained this better than the other guy. So of course, naturally, that's going to bond you to your prospect and keep you in that first position, because that's what you want to be. You want to be in that first position where you are their trusted advisor. If they could think of you not as a salesperson, but as you're their trusted technical expert who's going to help guide them through the solar process. They're going through the process, but you're the guide that's right there that can answer whatever questions come up, help them get over whatever issues or objections might come up throughout the process. That's where you want to be. Is, hey, I know Joe. I know Joe will give me the right answer on this. I know Dan will give me the right answer if I ask him this. Let me ask him this, right? And then eventually when it comes time to close the deal, then you're going to be the one that they go with. Now, that being said, you do have to ask for the sale. You all that have gone through sales training, you've probably heard this statistic that on average, you have to ask for the sale 7 times before you say yes. So whenever you are checking in with your prospect, or you are, following up to provide that value, you also ought to be encouraging them to move to the next step. And so that might mean you end your email with, hey, when would you like to have something up and running? Or hey, would you like me to shoot over the paperwork so we can get the process started? Just put it out there, I kind of think of it like a tennis match. You're knocking the ball back and forth from one person's court to the other person's court. You never want to leave a communication with just, answer their question and that's it. If you're sending them an email, answer their question, also ask them a question of your own. Like, hey, when would be a good time to get started? Or hey, when would you like to have all of this up and running? And that way they now feel obligated to kind of, knock the ball back into your court, so to speak. And it kind of keeps that engagement going. So don't be afraid to ask for the sale. Don't be pushy. Don't be annoying. Certainly don't be rude, but be encouraging them that, hey, if this is the right solution, if this is like, well, what I've got is the right solution for you, then hey, great, let's go ahead and move to the next step.